With your vehicle safely raised and supported, take off all 6 lug nuts using a 21mm socket, and then remove the wheel. If your wheel is stuck on like this one, go ahead and thread a lug nut back on. Get a large rubber mallet and hit it from the backside. Always hit the tire, not the rim. There we go. And remove your wheel. Next, disconnect the bolt that holds this bracket on for the brake line. To remove this pin, there's a very small cotter pin here at the top. I'm going to spray this down with some rust penetrant because, well, clearly there's a lot of rust going on here. And I'm going to grab my locking pliers, lock onto the end of this pin, try and twist it to break it free. Perfect, that one broke free. Do the same to the other one up top here. Okay, now that it's free, there are 2 cotter pins, one on each pin. You're going to have to remove those. These should be a single use only, so it does not matter if you bend them or break them. Next, go ahead and pull out these pins. Remove the, well, what's left of the spring. And before you remove your brake pads, you can try and compress the caliper a little bit. That'll make it easier to actually remove the brake pads. Press onto the caliper like this. That should force it to retract just a little bit. You don't need much. And next, pull the brake pads out. The trick to doing this is you have to do it evenly, because if you kink it one way or the other, it's going to get stuck. This vehicle has been sitting for a very long time, so the brake pads are extremely stuck. With a 17mm socket, remove these 2 bolts here. Do not touch any of the other ones. These are the caliper to knuckle bolts. The caliper does not have a bracket on this vehicle. Leave that one in just a little bit. Remove the top. And finish removing the bottom. Remove the bolts. Take the caliper and set it aside. I'm going to put it on top of the upper control arm. I tied up my caliper with a bungee cord on the upper control arm. Just make sure it's not putting any pressure on the brake hose. Next, let's remove the rotor. This one's pretty seized on there, so I'm going to have to use a large hammer. Hit wherever you'd like, just make sure you don't hit any of the studs. I'm going to put on a lug nut so that the rotor doesn't go flying if it does break free. It's best to hit from the back, that way you push it off. Well, I guess that only took one hit. Remove the rotor and throw it away. Next, you want to clean up this hub surface area. Use a wire brush and just get rid of all the rust flakes and debris that has built up on here. You want the new rotor to sit nice and flush. And once you've wire brushed it, go ahead and clean it off with some brake parts cleaner. Next, I'm going to spray it with some anti-seize. This is going to prevent the rotor from sticking in the future. It's also going to prevent rust from building up. Next step is to install the rotor, but backwards. That's going to make it easier for you to clean this surface. And you have to clean it because it's always coated in an oil coating from the factory, so it doesn't rust while it's sitting on the shelf. Okay, spin it around. Mount it properly. Clean this side too. And while I'm working, I'm going to install a lug nut to hold the rotor on for me so it doesn't fall off. So I've taken the caliper off of where I secured it, and I'm going to use a brake caliper depression tool. What this is going to do, and I'm using this special one because I need to push because I need to push both sides pistons all at once. Otherwise, most likely what's going to happen is I push this side in, this side's going to come out. So insert your tool to where it's pushing up against the pistons, and then very slowly push all 4 pistons back at once until they are completely retracted. Okay, that's fully retracted. Remove your tool. And the next step is going to be cleaning this caliper. It's a little tricky to do this because it doesn't actually come off of the car like a regular caliper bracket would. But what you want to do is basically just clean here, just clean this area here, this one, and then the same thing on the opposite side. That's where the pads slide. Next, remount your caliper. Snug it up and then torque it to 90 foot-pounds. Next, you want to carefully put just a little bit of grease right on these ears where the brake pad rides. You just want to be careful not to get it on the rotor. And to install your brake pads, one of them will have a wear indicator. That one's going to go on the inboard side with the wear indicator on the bottom. Go ahead and slide that in. If for some reason they don't slide in smoothly, that means there's too much rust on these areas of the caliper, and you're going to have to clean it up with something more aggressive, such as a sanding disc or whatever else you have to remove material. You basically want to remove chunks of rust. Next, I've cleaned up my 2 pins on a wire wheel. I'm actually going to coat them with a very thin layer of grease, and what that's going to do is it's going to prevent them from rusting in the future, and it's going to allow the pads to easily slide on these slide pins. Go ahead and push them all the way through. Any excess grease will just build up right here, and so wipe it away. And before you actually lock in the top pin, pull it out and slide the spring over it. So it has to go with the hooks facing out, obviously, but you want these bent areas to go over the pads, this one underneath the hook. And what you want to do is squish it in and put the hooks into these holes that are provided in the brake pad, just like that. And last but not least, insert your locking cotter pin that holds these pins in. And last but not least, don't forget to put this bolt back and snug it up. And of course, reattach your ABS wire. Now don't forget to pump your brake pedal, and let's put the wheel back on. Next, get the wheel back on. Start on all 6 lug nuts, and then I'll bottom them out, torque them to 83 foot-pounds.